It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the MSD on 117.8. It's Tuesday, July 2nd, and so happy for you joining us, and we are ready to start this month together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Today we have an exciting podcast for you with Bible Today and 2G Talks. All right, so how's everyone doing? How was your week? Welcome to the second half of this year. I hope that you guys had a great first half. And I think, whether or not you experience anything bad or you experience something good, that hopefully that the second half will be much better. And honestly, I think I don't know about for you guys, but I hope that with the experiences of this year and of definitely this year and last year, and even of the last few years together, that we're more and more getting accustomed to flourishing even within adversity, right? That we even that we enjoy who we become. Because honestly, if you really think about it, no matter what's happening on the outside and in the world, and I'm not going to even say that all of the things happening outside are negative. I think if we choose to look at everything being negative, that's also not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily make things easy or better, but whether things are bad or good outside, if we ourselves see that we're improving and growing and doing better, and even that metric we have to design really carefully, right? But the fact that you're here today and that you're listening to the word and that you're trying to improve yourself, even if sometimes maybe you take a couple steps back, right? That is really, really powerful. So I really believe that means that for everyone here listening to the segment today, that based on the first half of this year and the last 6 months, that you guys are doing really well, right? The fact that you're here, and it really does mean that you're doing really well. And so, I hope that everyone's having, a great second half, and let's really run together. It's interesting because one of the things I was talking to with Pastor Sky, when he first suggested doing these full-length episodes, was he was saying that this is doing this podcast for him has been very, very therapeutic. And he feels like it would be the case, for anyone who does these full-length episodes too, right? He's able to just freely share and speak, all the things that he goes through, and it helps him to think and process it, right? By sharing it with everyone. And I think it's really true, right? These last few weeks have been really great, and so I think that all of us have to find occasion to testify, right, to one another and to share and also to listen and converse with members too, because this is so valuable, right? Because as each of us are living our lives, one of the biggest things that we do is that we make history, right? Is we make ministry. But when we tend to deal with just newcomers or just people in the world, right? Even though we try to live a good life, there's this process of teaching people who we are. What we're like, right? So it's a process of whether it's directly evangelizing them and teaching some of the word, or teaching them how we choose to live in Providence, right? That takes time. And especially if someone doesn't really understand, right? Or even if we're not trying to evangelize them, right? When we just share who we are, it can be kind of tough, right? Because people don't understand right away. Some people might, and I think there's things about us that they may value and things that they don't see right away. So even for me, as I've been interacting with more newcomers, it's you're introducing a child to something that they've never seen before, right? And it's not to look down on newcomers, right? But even I would say, especially people who haven't learned anything, right? It's really like that, right? But so the benefit of what we do with the MSD, and then through different things at church and through the conversations, dialogues, testimonies, QTs, and Bible studies that we do together, is we have a collection of people who are kind of on the same page as us, right? And we're able to talk about things without drawing like reactions of like not being able to understand each other and such. And I think that's like really, really, really beneficial and important. And so I hope that more and more people will be able to engage like this, right? And so that's it. That's all of the weekend updates. And I just want to share, a couple of announcements. Like first thing, like, congratulations to Chelsea and Aaron, right, on their new video, right, that came out this past Saturday, right? Like, like over the last few months, they've introduced their son to the world, Kyo. I really can't wait to meet him. And I'm so excited that, Chelsea's back on the channel and that we may be able to hear from Aaron going forward into the future too. Right, so Love and Life returns for episode 7, so make sure to check that out. And so grateful to have more and more voices like this, like on the MSD and such too. Yeah, like in the same way, I hope that Chelsea and Aaron will be able to continue to share their insight, and that not just them, but that all of the Providence Blessed families and JS and like the future generations and the second gen too will be able to learn from this, right? Like that Ikeo, like 10-20 years in the future, will be able to listen to what his mom and dad were talking about. Right, so that's our first announcement. And second announcement, as always, and as we've been growing with the Rebel Pastor segment 2, the live streams, it'll be this Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 10 a.m. in Korean Standard Time. So make sure to join and to support Pastor Sky as he does the live streams, and also to share it with any newcomers and any lives that you want to evangelize and that you want to introduce to the Word. And so the third announcement is something that Pastor Sky mentioned yesterday, and this is really exciting too. Right? This is about the poll, and the poll is about what language we should have subtitles on for the Rebel Pastor, right? Like, Pastor Scott gave some examples, like the obvious are like the English, Chinese, Korean, Japanese languages, but there's also Mongolian, there's Indian, there's like Sri Lankan, there's like all of these different languages that we could use like AI tools to subtitle. And I think because we have a global audience, and you guys as like a global, like kind of like what's that called, like research that we're performing, right, and like data collecting that we're doing from these kind of polls, I'm really interested in what you think is necessary, like for the world in terms of like our online ministry efforts. Right, I think English is kind of an obvious one, and I think like the big languages across the world are very important. But like in terms of like where our efforts should lie, like in terms of these efforts, I think it's would be really cool to do and to hear from you guys. Yes, so how's everyone doing? I wonder how everyone's weekends were. Like, did you do anything interesting? And I'm also really curious to know if like in the respective places you are, like whether you're like, in part of a big church, or like you're in a remote region by yourselves, because I know we have quite a few members like that too, or you're like part of a pioneer church or a smaller size church. Like if there were any events that you guys have started to have, over the weekends, or just something that you're doing personally, like with respect to faith or ministry, or like in terms of just spiritual growth in general too, right? Because like here, like even in San Francisco too, like we've been doing more with our newcomers. So like this past Saturday we went hiking, and I'm in San Francisco for about another week, so like every single week that I'm here, like I'm gonna go proactively and go hiking. And I think for me this is really interesting because I really love hiking. And like when we were growing up as kids, like at church we hiked like a fair amount. Like hiking was a pretty regular activity that we had, and I think that's that just makes sense, right? Because I think in Providence, right, like hiking, like things related to nature, like being in Warmingdong, like that's just something that's been a part of our history, right, for the last like 20-30 years, right? And so I think it was natural, like even for us here in San Francisco, to make that part of like our repertoire and the things that we do. And so for myself, it's something that I've done from a very young age, and I really, really enjoy it, right? So, and I mentioned this because I think there are times that we have like ministry events and evangelism events, and we're like maybe doing things that we don't necessarily like. But one thing that I've seen from that, unless like it becomes something that people do consistently and they start to like the thing, that typically it doesn't work out. And if you guys have seen something else, like feel free to let me know. But like let's say like I'll give an actual example. I'll be honest, right? I'll give an actual example, right? So for me, Like some of the things I don't like certain sports. Like I don't really like ping pong. I don't really like badminton, and I don't really like tennis. And like I think those sports are quite common, I think, in a lot of Asian cultures. And so it's something that we have played at church before too. And like for me, I actually played badminton in high school, like for the high school team. And I hated it. Like I don't know. I think maybe in my mind I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like not a very in my mind, right? Don't judge me, right? Like it's not a very masculine sport. It's not very contact. You know, it's not very intense in terms of like an aggressive factor. And so I didn't really like it. I think you know those sports are a lot more technical. And you know, like as I grow older, I appreciate it too. And I think there was also kind of this like stigma that some of those are like Asian sports, right? And I think like growing up like in the West, like in like public schools, like I didn't want to be like drawn into that image necessarily. Like I didn't hate the fact that, you know, I was Asian or something like that, but I didn't want to be boxed in, right? I wanted to be friends with a lot of people, and I wanted to have people's respect, and I also wanted to do things with a wide variety of people. I didn't want to just do things with Korean kids at school or just do things with Asian kids at school because I don't well the big thing is I don't think that that's what Providence is about, right? And that's just clear from how we make history and how our churches are too, right? It's very mixed, and we, you know, may like I don't know what your guys' churches are like, but like just given the fact that you know our Providence Church started in Korea, but that we're here like in the West, like learning the word, it's obvious that it's multicultural, and we may interact like. For many of our listeners who aren't Korean, you may never have experienced anything to do with Korea had you not come to Providence, right? And same thing for me, right? If I didn't move to the States and if I wasn't a part of this church, and I'm really grateful to this too, but from a young age, like we got to visit different churches. And I think even more than other second gen, like from the time that I was like in middle school and early high school, like I got to go on trips to like different parts of the country, like with some of the pastors and with some of the other guys, and experience like different people. And I learned so much from interacting with people, like even like within the church, like people who are like of different like cultures and like different regional cultures and different like ethnic backgrounds too. And it was a huge plus for me, right? And I really enjoyed it. But not to get too distracted, right? Like going back to the hiking thing, right? Like so hiking for me it was like something that I really enjoyed. So I started to do it, and like compared to like maybe some activities that I don't like to do, like I felt that okay, like I'm here for about another month, and like in the past, like I thought about like doing more hiking things for the church. Right. But then, like, for some people, hiking might not be something that they really enjoyed. And I think, like, a big time where we pushed to have, like, ministry events was, like, right around, like, post COVID when things were opening up. And we try to have events that were, like, catered to everyone. But oftentimes, what that means is, like, whatever the specific category is, we have to cater to the lowest common denominator, right? We have to make it easy for everyone. And so for our church here in San Francisco, like we, especially like a couple years ago, like we have a lot of Milky Way. And so if you trace back, like even the kids who are 10, if you trace back to like 3 like or so years, they were like 7, right? And we have like younger kids. So even if we're going hiking, we have to do like hikes that are like, you know, like maybe a mile long. It has to be easy. It has to, you know, allow for like strollers and other things like that. And you know, like doing things as a large church once in a while is fun. But let's say if your target market for something, for like for me, like if I'm hiking, I think I would need at least about, you know, at least 4 miles, right? With like at least like 600 feet elevation gain. And you know, that's a metric that I've like only learned after doing this a long time. Like that's like the minimum, right? And that's like not something that's possible when it's like intended for everyone, for people who hate hiking but want to join the ministry event and stuff like that. And so, like, in the past, when we try to have these events, it kind of fizzled out. But I was like, okay, like, I enjoy it. So I know that if I put on a hike for the remainder of July for every single weekend, at least I will be there. And I won't suffer because it's something that I truly enjoy. And then so like with this past weekend, you know, we invited like our current newcomers, like who have like learned a lot, and some of our members came, and then 2 of my friends came too. Right, so it was a really great time, and so in the future, like I'm sure there's other members, there may be members who came out this Saturday who don't even like hiking themselves, right? And if they don't come the next weekend or the weekend afterwards, that's totally okay, because I will be there and I will enjoy that time. And so yeah, like I hope that for each person that you guys can think of these creative ideas, and like we said, like if like you have done like ministry events for things that you didn't like and it went well, then let us know too. But I'm kind of like a proponent, like in the moment, of like doing things that we really enjoy, because typically like the things that we enjoy are also the things that we're better at. Like for us, right? Like we've in the past, so we've tried to evangelize with like ping pong and badminton, and most of our church are not good at ping pong or badminton, right? So then like if we go out to these like facilities for these sports and we try to evangelize people, it's obvious that we're not very good. And then I think it's hard to connect people after that to evangelism, because then it's like clear that we're not really there because we care so much about ping pong. Like it's not necessarily like like directly like that, like people are like, oh, like these guys are here to use sports to evangelize, sort of thing. But I think it's just hard to get into it, right? Like it's hard to do that consistently. Like you could convince me to go play ping pong once for a ministry event, but I don't think that you could convince me to do it like repeatedly or unless you start to like make me involved and interested in ping pong or something like that. Yeah, but I hope that for everyone across the world, that as we do more ministry events too, that you will advocate for stuff that you're interested in and that the members are interested in, that we'll have a fun time and that we can share about this and like reflect on this. And I'm really glad for the MSD on 117.8, because yeah, like after this weekend, like it was tiring, right? Like with the hike and like with all this stuff with newcomers, like I'm completely sunburnt right now, like on my shoulders and my face. But the fact that we can meet together like throughout the week and speak to each other on the MSC 117.8, and share it with like not just newcomers, but as you mentioned in the beginning, with kindred spirits, with people who understand each other, who share the same context, and so we can like kind of get points across without going into like every single little detail and trying to make each other understand. I think it's a huge positive that everyone should take advantage of. Yes, so that's kind of the first updates for today. And so as we get into the first segment, let's go into our first break with a song, right? Like for those of you guys who've been following for the last few weeks, I've been trying to use more and more of our Providence songs, right? The songs that we sing, and especially the songs that Sung has given to us, and that the Holy Spirit provided the melody and the lyrics and the and each of these things, and that Sung was the singer for. Like I really like this, right? Because some of these songs are not songs that maybe that I would say were my favorite to begin with, but like doing this and like making it the break and like thinking about the lyrics and stuff, it makes me think about the songs to a deeper level. So with their first break, like Love to the Extreme, like I really really like the lyrics from the beginning, right? Because like it was talking about like like loving to the extreme, like to the point that two become one, right? It used like this line that said like love should be hot, like melting the two together, right? And when I really thought about it, I was like, wow, like that's a really good way to describe it, right? It's like you're making two separate things one, right? And that's such a simple description of what love is. But I think like when I looked out in the world, and before like singing this song like on the Sunday and like thinking about it, like thinking about what the world thinks of as being love, it's so convoluted and messed up and confusing, and they don't have this answer to what love is. And even if they haven't, because they're not practically doing it and living that life, they don't know what love is, right? Like they may know hypothetically what it is, but what they're practicing like between each other, and like definitely not with the heavens, that is not really love, right? It may be physical love, it may be like kind of rudimentary level love, but love should be something where two become one, right? Where we and heaven become one. And so, I think this was really something so amazing. And so, you guys may have different realizations from listening to the song during the break. And if you have something, please share, because I think, all of us learning from the songs of this time period is critical. It's very important. And these are the things that we will share with the next generation and so on and so forth. So without any further ado, let's listen to our first break with Love to the Extreme.
Extreme of love, just as two counterparts love and become one. Love should be hot, melting the two together. Both sides should never change till the end. Then you'll share everlasting true love. Live every moment with the Trinity. Counterparts of love, totally as one. Love is a burning fire, it is a blazing fire. In this world, love them the same. Heaven be love here on the earth. Do not change in body, soul, or spirit. Share extreme love eternally. That's the life of heaven with the Trinity. Reach the extreme of love, reach the extreme of love. There's no greater love. Reach the extreme of love, just as two counterparts love and become one. Love should be hot, melting the two together. Both sides should never change till the end. Then you'll share everlasting true love. Live every moment with the Trinity. Counterparts of love, totally as one. Love is a burning fire, it is a blazing fire. In this world, love them the same. Heaven be love here on the earth. Do not change in body, soul, or spirit. Share extreme love eternally. That's the life of heaven with the Trinity. Reach the extreme of love, reach the extreme of love. There's no greater love. Do not change in body, soul, or spirit. Share extreme love eternally. That's the life of heaven with the Trinity. Reach the extreme of love, reach the extreme of love. There's no greater love.
Yes, so hope everyone enjoyed that. That was our first break with Love to the Extreme. So now we will enter the first segment for today. And, as always, we'll also, go over the title for this week's message. And so, there were two titles, right, for the message. Right? The first was that the eternal world is determined on earth. Right? And the second is that God and the Holy Spirit help you every day. Right? So that's such a hopeful and, such a great message. And what's so interesting? Like when the message started, it made me think back like a lot, like on Providence history, right? Like even like, in the last like 10, 20 years. And like I don't want to I don't mean like think back on like thinking about like wow, like 10 years has passed, like 20 years has passed and what's gone on in between, but it made me think of stuff that we did like 10 years ago and 20 years ago, right? And like there's something that quite a common concept in Providence and something that we emphasize a lot, that like that we are on the forefront, that we're like man, how does that song go? Like we are like like leading the world. Like we're piercing ahead. Like, oh man, what was it? Like maybe I'm sure you guys know like better than I do. It's not coming to mind right now. But that we are like going ahead of the culture of the world. And I don't know what you guys think of that and like, what comes to mind with that. But it made me think about how like there were some things that we did in Providence, like even from 10, 20 years ago. And it was really like so important, like not just for 10, 20 years ago, but it's so important for today, right? It's like so important, right? And like one of the things, like some of the things that we used to do is like we kind of talk about this, and I think people kind of talk about this in kind of like a bittersweet way, like 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 that it was a good thing, but that they struggled through it for a little bit. But like I'm looking at it now, like in light of today's message about like how like yeah like we're not just living for our current lives now, but we're living for eternity, right? And everything that we do in this life is intended for something that will last eternally, right? And if we do good now, if we become perfect now, we become and we live in perfect, harmony and in heaven forever. But if there are things that we don't fix, then obviously, it leads to suffering, right? Eternally. Right, so like like I'll give a clear example, like what came to mind from 10, 20 years ago, right? And it was that like there was an emphasis like back then about like not watching TV, right? Not consuming media, right? Some places, sometimes like some context, there's like no like coffee, right? No eating late, no eating instant food, and like I think it was like different to in some places. Like some places, like people made it kind of like a command, and other places it was more like, okay, this is what we know we should do to live good lives, right? And I think people who were able to make that, have that thought process and understand that that's what that means, knows that it's not like being forced on you, right? It's just that in order to live a good life, that this is what you have to do. And I think there were like some of these things are so obvious that I don't even need to say. But just for the sake of getting it out there, I'll say it, right? So, we mentioned no TV and media and like, like coffee and other things like that. But the more obvious ones that I think even in Christianity, I would say that a lot of denominations know are sins, just like no smoking, no drinking, right? No like engaging in in with the opposite sex and being obsessed with those kinds of things, right? Like not being so focused on money or fame or like the physical world and those kinds of things, right? That seems so obvious, but the reason why I pointed out is that like in the world, right? Like it now, like 10, 20 years later, like I don't know if you guys have been seeing this like on YouTube or anywhere, whatever that you are on, or in the news or even in books. Like there's so much evidence now that those things are bad for you, right? Like in your life, right? Like one of the most shocking ones that I saw lately, and I think it's so great because this doesn't apply to us, right? Because we've been doing this like from 10, 20 years ago. 10, 20 years ago when we did this, like we may not have had all of the reasons explicitly written down, but it was supposed to be common sense, right? Like we know this is bad, and so we're the people who are not going to do it. We may not know all the reasons, but we know that it's bad, right? And you don't need to know all the reasons for why something is bad to not do it. But now, like, there's more and more evidence and there's more and more specific reasons why things are bad. Like, one of the things that, I was seeing recently was about the effects of alcohol, right? And, I think in this previous, like, year, something gave a message to the elder group, and, he talked about, not consuming alcohol. And so, I won't say anything about people who do or don't. And if, and within Providence too, there may be people who struggle with that. But one of the things that is clear, just as a rule in general, is just don't drink. But, in the world, like when we talk to new people about this, I think this is something that's like trickier for people who have spent a lot of time in their life, like consuming alcohol. But one of but now there's clear evidence for this, right? So I think people can get emotional about this, but the science and the truth behind it tells us that these things are bad, right? Like one of the things with alcohol is they say that, a little is better than, a lot, but none is better than a little. And that last phrase, that none is better than a little, is something that I would say that was even true 20 years ago, but now the research and the evidence is just so loud about that, right? Like that, like even like the faux science, the fake, research saying that, a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of wine is good for your heart, a little bit of this is good for your heart. Like most of those research and those results were funded by the alcohol industry. And like independent researchers who've like researched into alcohol have shown that even drinking a little bit is not good for you. Right. And so that's such a hopeful thing, right? It's something that, we were doing from so long ago. That's something that's always been doing his entire life. That we know from the Bible that we shouldn't have to explain, we shouldn't have need to explain to ourselves, and that we shouldn't have to explain to other people. Right? Like, why do you need to know like why alcohol is so bad for you and for what reasons? Right. And so I think this is really hopeful. Like I was really thinking about this like based on the message, right? Like, and this segment is about Bible today, like the things that are going on in this history and like the things we're living in. And so for me, like really thinking about that, right? Like, why do we do this? Like, what are all of the reasons? Like if we had to just come up with the most general reason, it was this week's message title. That we're people who are living, for heaven, for eternity. And in order to live eternity and for eternity, we know that we have to live this good life. And that was such a hopeful thing. Right. And so like when we think about that sentence about leading the culture of today, right? I think it's not about the numbers. It's not about how big Providence is in terms of the people, but each individual person living according to this model is so important. Right? Like so like this is really interesting. Like I don't know if I mentioned it on the MSC 117.8 recently, but I've been listening to the biography of Elon Musk by Sir Walter Isaacson. It's I think you guys may have seen it. Like it's in all bookstores like all across the world, right? It has like Elon Musk's face on a black background, and I think it's been translated in a bunch of different languages. Like even when I was in Malaysia, like I think they had a Chinese version, right? When I was over there, and it's a really well written book. Like the author, Sir Walter Isaacson, he's such a good writer. Like I've read his biography of Albert Einstein before too, and so I think the one on Elon Musk, like I'm about like maybe like 2/3 into it, is really well written. And like obviously because I think everyone knows who Elon Musk is, and about all of the scientific and technological developments, right, from Tesla and SpaceX and Starlink and all of these other companies, right, even PayPal, right, which he was a big part of in the beginning, like how all of like the four companies that he started to date are like all like market valued like over like several billions of dollars, right? I think like Tesla at the time of writing the book was like valued at $1 trillion, right? And like briefly there was like a brief stint like back in 2021 where he was like the richest person like on earth. And say what you will about him, of course he has many problems, but the way that he's run his companies, in a lot of ways it echoes like part of the things that we value in Providence. And I think that's really affirming for me, like really looking at that, because like we see how we're making ourselves, and sometimes we may wonder like how that translates into the real world. But I think everyone in Providence has already seen and knows and values the culture that we have. But seeing how like even in the greatest companies on earth, the things that have driven them to success are the things that we do within Providence is such an affirming thing. And I think Providence will continue to grow, right? And that's also part of like the purpose of creation from Genesis 1:28, where like we are like doing the steps of developing ourselves first, and then of like we're following the right order to the purpose of creation, like developing ourselves first, becoming absolute counterparts of God, and then ruling over the world. So the time will come when more and more successful people come from Providence, right? Both in terms of the external witnesses and like people who do these kind of big things in the world, and internal witnesses too. And so I think people already know this, and this is already happening. And you guys all, and we are all doing this, right, by developing ourselves. But if you ever have felt to some degree like, oh my gosh, why isn't, Providence growing? Like, why aren't these things happening? I hope that you'll take a step back and like think about it in this way. That, it starts from the small thing of like developing ourselves, right? It may not seem big at the time, and some people who have left Providence have said this too, but we really make the world and we lead the culture of the world by developing ourselves in this way. And, related to the Elon Musk thing and this thing, right, one of the good things I would say about him, right, with the technological advancements and with how he's run his companies, is different because he doesn't want to develop technology in a reckless way, right? He wants it to be for the benefit of human consciousness, as he says. So he wants humanity to improve as a result of technological advancements, right? And I think that's like you couldn't say that with everyone who's in the field of technology. Like some people just develop tech that's not really intended to benefit like people, right? Not intended to make people better, not intended to make the world better. And it's not to say that everything he did like does that, but I think this gives us an important like question, right, about how to measure humanity's progress, right? Because the thing that like I think has been like technology has been a huge part of like how we define human progress, like even from like the industrial revolution and from the past and when like technologies became like really prevalent. But I think we really live in a time period where technology is gonna like keep advancing. It's gonna become so advanced that like not everyone is even gonna be able to catch up. And I think we're already there, and things will happen more and more in that way. But as we see the effect that technology has in the world, and even like just what humanity in many ways has become, we see that in order for humanity to really be like to progress and to become better, that even more than technological advancements, what even though that may be important, what's even more important is the level of character development and the how much people have developed themselves and made themselves. And this is such a huge thing because like even though like technology has advanced in so many ways, like I think many people across the world, they've taken back steps, right? And this is true on both the level of character and also just in terms of development too. Like I was like a clear metric that I think happens like even in Korea and with our young children today is I spoke to my cousin in Korea who just became an elementary school teacher, and she was saying that even in Korea like literacy rate is falling, and that was not true of these last like 30-40 years, right, of this previous generation. But now that technology, like, in she didn't specifically say that this is the reason, and this may not be the only reason. But one of the things that we see with the advent of modern day technology is that so many people watch videos and they're like reliant on those kinds of things, right? So like kids, like from the time that they're young, they're inundated with videos, with YouTube, and their like eyes are so glued to that, and they haven't had that like mental development. So when kids are addicted to something, they're like really addicted to it. Like even adults have a hard time managing those things. So imagine as a kid like having so much at your fingertips, right, and not being able to control it, right? And this is a question that we see all over the world that we're dealing with. And so we see in especially in these contexts that if humanity, if people fail to develop themselves, then no matter how much technology advances, human beings will be set back. And not just that, that actually it grows in a disadvantageous way, right? We fall behind. And like as we know, like in Providence, like we're trying to make a world of heaven, but Satan uses even the world of technology to make the world into a world of hell instead. So we now see how even more important our mission is, and how much we should develop ourselves, and how much that we need to develop the world too. But I think of course, there will be people within Providence, and I know this to be a fact because there's already people like this in the world, right? That recognize these patterns and they want to change the world. But like the thing is, in order to change the world in its entirety, right, we have to start with the individual and we have to start with us. And like we like through the act of loving God, of making Providence history, of like, you know, the first thing that came from today, this week's message was that, you know, we have to repent first to come to God. Like we have to get rid of our imperfections and get rid of the things that aren't great. And, you know, that was the first thing that Jesus said when he went out to make his ministry. And I think people in the world, they don't know and see that today. Right? They don't know that the first step to fixing the world's problems is for them to make themselves in God's image, to have this relationship with God, and to make Providence history in this way. And, you know, then the second title, that God is doing everything together with us, we can see this from looking at today and from looking at the last 10, 20 years and everything that we've done in between, right? Like sometimes, you know, I don't know, like if there are periods of your faith, you know, in the time that you've been here, you're like, oh my gosh, like, you know, there's so much to do, you know, I feel kind of burnt out, like different kinds of things. But when you look at the whole and you see like how much that in that moment, even though it was difficult, that God was trying to make us and he was trying to prepare us for today. Like imagine where your life would be with respect to like, you know, all the technological advances like today, if you had not come to Providence when you did. Right, would like even now there might be some hardships, and I think especially like in COVID and in the years that followed, like where technology has been a bigger part of our lives, and where we're home and we're on Zoom all the time, and people may be watching like you know Netflix and YouTube and different streaming services and stuff like that. Like how easy it is to sink into that world of like social media and television and different things that we see online. And like imagine how much worse that would be. Like even if it is difficult for you like being Protestant, imagine what your thought and your mentality would be like if you didn't hear the word from the time that you came about these kinds of things, right? Without even expecting that one day like you know that social media will be like this, that TikTok will be like this, that YouTube will be like this, right? And so I think that's such a huge thing. And we only know, you know, how far things will go like in the next 10, 20 years and within our generation and how things are going to change. But Providence, by, you know, focusing on making ourselves, you know, not just 10, 20 years ago, not, you know, from the time that something started, you know, Providence history on Alpha Day, but even today is focused on making ourselves, making each and every person, and making our church, making our families, making our communities, and making this world of Providence is leading the way of humanity's progress. And if we do well in this, and you know we are doing well in this, and we will do well in this, and we can do this, right? Like we know that we can do this, and we are establishing the foundation for the next 1,000 years. And hopefully other people will get on board, and more people will, and that, you know, people will not just do things in the haphazard way that people are doing in the world, but that they will take the approach that God wants us to have in Providence, and that God has been teaching us through the man and mission of this time period about how we should live. Right? And I thought this was really shocking too, right? Because like, and I'm sure that everyone in Providence has experienced this, and you know, if you haven't, you know, in one way, I'm sure you have in a different way. But even in the world, right? Like when you see the people who are super successful in today's modern era, and even like across the world, like in the different like spheres of like whether it's technology or whether it's like philosophy or different voices like in the social sphere, the people who are at the forefront of humanity, the things that they value, the things that they speak about are all topics that you can find in the Bible. Like I have yet to find someone who like says something that is not contained in the Bible. And you know the funny thing is, like when you read the Bible, you see that it's deeper than what these things than the things that people say, right? The things that they care about, the things that they quote. And a lot of people who say like wise and piety stuff, they just say like whatever's in the Bible, just in a different way. Like, and people think that is very novel. And I'm like, dude, like what you said has been said for more than like 2,000, 4,000 years ago. right? And so, for us, like, we not just try to make poor imitations of the word, but we make the word directly into a part of our lives. And, we use God's words for this 1,000-year history too. Yeah, and so, that's Bible today. I hope that you guys really enjoyed, like, and that, we can, talk more about this and really see the value of it once more. And so, like, with this too, like, we'll go into our second break for today before we conclude with 2G Talks. So for the second break of today, we're gonna be listening to or singing, "My Beloved One," and this was a song that we sang, on for praise this past week. And one of the lines I really liked from this was, like, when we look at, like, even what we were just talking about with the last 10, 20 years and with how humanity's developed and the reasons why we live, right? Like, one of the things that this song talked about is that, like, it talks about how, like, knowing the reason why we live, right? Like, knowing the reason why we love, like, and this is the funny part, right? This part really got to me, that we know the reason why we must live, why we must eat to live well, and why we need to sleep. Right? And that's such a shocking thing, right? Like, if you think about it, like, think about, like, and I think this came to mind because, this past Saturday, after the hike, I was spending time with my friend and, like, sharing parts of the word with him. And he's someone who I think has had deeper insights into life than a lot of my other friends. So sometimes I'm a little bit, I'm more real with him. So I was, like, telling him, I was like, because a lot of our friends, they're really into eating, and I think everyone likes food, right? Everyone likes good food, but, like, some people are, like, way more into it than others. I think for us, like, in Providence, even though we enjoy good food and we enjoy, like, like, all the things that come with eating food, we know the limit. Like, we know, like, how it's not the end all of, like, life, right? But people in the world, they keep chasing, like, whether it's food, whether it's money, whether it's experiences, they keep chasing the next thing because they don't know what it's for, right? They don't know what the purpose of life is. So I asked my friend, I was realizing, hey, like, don't you ever just get, because he was talking about how food is so important to him, and I was, like, telling him, like, is there no, like, hey, like, don't you ever think about, like, there being an end to, like, eating food and just enjoying that, like, thinking that that's, like, the end of everything? And I think, I don't know if it really hit him in the moment. I think, that goes back to the part about, like, I think sometimes it's hard for friends and family to hear it from us and to value it right away. But I feel like, when he goes back and he thinks about it later, maybe it'll hit him to a different level. But yes, but we know. And so when I was, like, singing the song, like, when you're singing the song and you're not really thinking about this kind of thing, when you're not thinking about the context, it might seem kind of funny that we're, like, singing, like, why must we eat to live well and why we need to sleep. But in Providence, like, when we are valuing the purpose of creation and God's purpose and his relationship with us, I think this makes so much sense. It just is so deep, right? We know the reason why we have to live well, right? It's not just to enjoy the food, but it's to live a good life, right? And the reason for sleep, like, so that we can manage our health and use it for the eternity that our life, that the spirit will live in heaven, right? And there's, like, a deeper purpose, and so we're not just focused on the act of eating, on the act of sleeping, on the act of generating money, and on the act of living in this world. And I think that's such a great thing. And so with that, we'll get into the break for today. And today's conversation with 2G Talks will kind of pick up on this train of thought, towards the end.
I first knew the meaning of life on the day that I met you. On the day I came to know God, I came to realize the one who created all things. From the time I discovered God's deeper purpose, why our great Trinity made us all. everything. Now I know that you loved us, and one day gave us life. I came to know their love.
The reason why we must always love, the reason that we must live.
Why must we eat to live well, and why we need to sleep? These things I came to realize. Together here with my love, loving each other without a single regret. Now I know what it means to live a beautiful and awesome life. Oh my Lord, you're my beloved here on earth and in heaven. God, you are my true love for all eternity. You're my Holy Spirit, and today, while loving you more, I will fulfill your will. I'll live forever this way. Lord, you said, as you live life, don't forget us. Don't forget, think about us always if you don't. You will find that there's no satisfaction in life is without joy. Lord, I found that to be true. So today, I will remember God and the Spirit. I will keep you in my thoughts, Lord. I will think about you. I'll discuss with you. I will make all my plans with you. Living and not your world of joy. This world more beautiful every day.
Awesome. So yes, that was the song My Beloved One as the second break. And so we'll go into our final topic and our final segment for today with 2G Talks. And I think it kind of like goes into all the things that we discussed already so far. And also a big shout out to Chelsea and Aaron with, their now that they've restarted and resumed their podcast segment. It kind of like, I think it relates to that too, and I really wish them luck, with starting a family and being a blessed family in this history. And I think it kind of goes in line with like the conversation about what we've been doing for the 10-20 years, and like all the things that we have been doing, and like this growth that we have been doing, like making ourselves, like both as individuals, as families, as churches, and as Providence, as like one unified history of God, like all of those kinds of things. Like at sometimes in throughout that journey, just like in an individual person's journey of life, it may be difficult, and there may be challenges, and there may be things that we're not sure about, like, oh, like, why are we doing this? Hopefully, like, we know, but sometimes we may not know, right? And so I think it's important to think about, like, oh, like, why is what we do so good? right? Like, what benefit do we really see? I think we really do have to talk about it. We have to think about it clearly in order to understand the benefits, because there's so many of them too, right? But when things are like unclear and when we're not like specifically talking about it, I think we may lose some of the value. And so I really want to talk about, like, like, and the reason why I mentioned Chelsea and Aaron, and like this concept about like with the new blessed families and with the blessed families all across the world. And I think this is both a time thing and a space thing, right? With the blessed families that are like, just starting their families today. And also, with American blessed family and like, with all of our viewership across the world with people who speak English and oftentimes in the West, right? With the newer generation, right? I think there are good things that, in this first, like, 30 years, like that we've done with the first generation of like the blessed families and with the second generation. And of course, there are things that, we could work on. And I think by having this conversation about the differences, we can pick up on like, oh, what's good and what's like not good. What can we improve on? I think this is a very important conversation to have. So one thing that I will say, like growing up in Providence, like in these last 30 years, and especially being a Korean, for one, being a Korean second generation, and also being now a Korean American second generation, is that, just as there is like all across Providence, the really great thing is that there's been an emphasis on moral living from a very young age. And sometimes that's challenging. And I think sometimes, like, when the pressures of that get too much for the child, and things aren't done in the right way, like, it can be stifling, and there can be problems too. So all those things have to be managed. But on the whole, the fact that all of Providence, and especially like within my Korean family, that there was this emphasis, right, like that that we learned from Providence on living good and becoming good people and knowing precisely what those things are, right? Like not drinking, not smoking, not sinning, not like being so obsessed with the opposite sex, and all of those things, like not being so focused on money and fame and power and those things from a very young age. I think that is so important. And that's not just a Korean thing. And it's not just an American thing, or a Japanese thing, or a Chinese thing, or a Taiwanese thing, or a Malaysian thing, or whatever, like whatever thing. But this is part of Providence culture, right? And we know that this is Providence culture because as we've been going over the message of the last few months, we know that history starts from one person. And that one person sets the example for how each person should be, for how each culture should be, for how, at the very end, how the world should be. And we know from looking at something, right, that he doesn't do anything, right? He's not obsessed with TV. He doesn't smoke or drink. He doesn't have opposite sex issues. He doesn't focus on money or fame or power. And all of those things are, could be at his fingertips, and it's accessible to him too. And it's maybe not even that he doesn't have those urges, but he's developed his character and his self, his mentality, and his actions so that those things aren't the things that he lives and that he makes the end result of his life, right? He's not into food, like he's not into just sleeping all day, but he lives very diligently. He oftentimes doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, and he works so diligently. He sacrifices, he does the things that maybe someone much younger than him and that just a worker should be doing. He does each of these things, and he lives together with the Trinity in this way. So yes, this is not just a Korean thing. It's not just a whatever thing. And so I hope that it never becomes a thing about different cultures necessarily, but it's something that I appreciate from growing up, and I think it has to be stated. And I will say that one thing that I don't think that on the whole that like in the I'll say maybe the first generation of maybe Korean parents and Korean blessed family, and definitely Korean immigrants and Asian immigrants, and not just within Providence, but just culturally, like in the States, is that they're, I would say the Asian parents, they don't do a good job of risk taking, right? And this isn't just to do with the parents. It's like that they make their kids very risk adverse. And this is something that I've seen on the large. And you guys can tell me what you think about this too, and what you may have seen too. right? But because I think that in providence, and this is something that we see, as we said, going back to the man of mission, right? With how, the example lives. And then not even just looking at, something in what he does, but looking at providence history across the whole. And I'm not just talking about the last 45 years, but I'm talking about like from the time of the past 6,000 years, from Jesus's time. Like, and one of the examples that comes to mind is like with Joshua, like when you look at the Joshua chapter 1, and the 4 times that God tells, Joshua and the Israelites to be bold and very courageous. One of the hallmarks of God's history is that people need to be fearless and bold. And that doesn't mean that your character may naturally be fearless and bold, but that you need to make your character to be able to overcome difficult, dangerous, and troubling things, right? And so I think being fearless is something that something has taught us, that he's like taught us through soccer, that he's learned from God, that he learned from making ministry, that he learned from making the natural temple and the mission masterpiece, and it's something that we need in Providence. But as a culture, and I think especially as a Korean culture, especially Korean and Asian culture, not in Providence, and as immigrants to like the United States or to Western cultures, that's something that on the whole that you don't really see with Asian immigrants. And I think this is something that I see much more with like American families. And I've seen, quite a few like Western, and I won't just say American as like United States, but like, on the whole, like with Western families, and not everyone does necessarily, but like in general, there's like a pattern of like raising kids who are more, willing to take risks. And this is also something I saw like in the Elon Musk biography too. But I think that this is so important, right? And so I think this is something that needs to be seen more of in today's parents. And I think today's parents are a little bit better with this than the first generation, right? And there's some differences with culture too. Like I see this in a lot of American blessed families, and I think that this is such an amazing thing that they do, right? So hopefully, I think we can learn from both and implement these things. And if we do that, and it does require like proactively, working on both facets of these two things. But I think if we do this, that we could raise our kids really well, and not just our kids, but ourselves and Providence history, like all as a result of this. Right, so I think these two things are very important, and that I really hope that we can learn from both and implement them. Right, to do the first thing of like living according to the standard, the example, living to according to what God's laws are, and doing what we know to be right. Right, because to do the inverse and to not do what we know to be right are like if we were to become like the people at Moses' time, and the moment that Moses disappeared, because he had an important task to do, that we turn to Aaron and we ask for the golden calf, right? If we know to ourselves, if we're not thinking critically about ourselves and we're not fixing it, then that is what we're doing. But we know the clear and obvious answer, which is we have to repent and come to God and live according to his word and do things according to what he asks, right? So the first thing, the moral thing, is to proactively work on ourselves, and this is both for parents, for us as evangelists, and as bridges to Christ, and bringing new people and evangelizing new people and bringing them to this history. Like we have to become the example. Right. And so like, I've told many parents this too. And I think, I don't need to say this for people who are a blessed family who have kids. They will see this from their kids at some point in their time. And I really feel for the parents too, because, parents do their best, and they really do. And everyone does. But, on the whole, this is still something that holds true. Right? The kids notice all of our behavior. So as much as we work on ourselves, the more that they'll see. And if they see something that becomes an obvious contradiction, it's hard for kids who haven't experienced the world yet, who aren't old yet, and who don't have the same kind of pains and experiences and different like kind of realizations as you do, to be able to match your behavior to the word that they listen to. And hopefully, if God raises them and protects them, and if they have a good relationship with you, and I think this goes to the second point about raising our kids to maybe be more experienced, and also to be not to be so risk averse and not to fear failure. they'll see that, oh, actually, like, life is tough. Life, like, you need to implement this word. We know this to be true. It may not be easy all the times, and so we can't necessarily judge people and our parents and use them to be the metric for, like, whether, Providence is successful or not. Right, but sometimes kids have a hard time with that, and I think the best thing that we can do, not just as parents but as evangelists, as spiritual mothers and fathers, is to become that example. Right, like, if the church is composed of people who do their best to live according to the standard, then evangelism will go well too. But if many of us fail to become that example and live according to what we preach, then obviously it'll become hard to evangelize and to convince other people to live in this way too. So that's the first thing. And I think the second thing that we have to show and we have to teach people is to be bold and courageous. I think I thought of two things related to this. One thing, it relates to both this being bold and courageous part, and the being moral and fulfilling our responsibilities, and repenting and going to God and establishing this relationship, is that both of these things are easy. Right, and this is something he said, like, in the Peace Soccer book, and that he said a lot. And I think this is common knowledge for everyone, but we have to think about this and remember this, right? But in the message, it says you have to be someone who believes that they can do it. Right, each of us has to be a person who believes that we can do it. And so we have to think of it as being easy, right? Objectively, it is easy. Like, why is it easy? Because we have the example. We know someone who's done it, right? And so, like, if we were trying to do this on our own and we didn't see and there's no example of it, then it may be hard. But it's easy because we see the person who's doing it. We have the manuscript, we have the directions, we have the word, we have the step-by-step thing, we have the examples, we have the stories, and not just that, but there's something that he says a lot, and he says that, do you think that I'm the only person who can do this? Right? Like, do you think that I'm the only person who can receive power from the heavens, who can receive direction, who can receive guidance, who can receive inspiration? He said, no, all of you guys can do this, right? All of you guys can become like gods too, right? With the lowercase g. All of you guys can make yourselves like the divine. All of us can fulfill that purpose of creation. So it's easy, right? So that's the first thing with related to being bold and courageous, and being moral. And with related to being bold and courageous, we might think about, like, okay, so how do you develop that? And let's say, like, you want to help someone else build that, right? And you're trying to become an example of that. And the thing that I think I've been seeing the last few weeks is that in order to show boldness and courage, we need to be proactive. Right? We need to do a lot of things, because doing a lot of things equates to putting things into practice, putting the word into practice. And, like, if we were to use, like, the parable of soccer that something that is used with peace soccer, it's like taking shots. Right? Like, by living our life and doing things, we're showing that we're taking shots. We're making shots, like, left and right. We're constantly doing things, and that builds courage and character, and that is courage and being bold. Right? Like, something you said, like, if you, like, try to shoot it 100 times and it gets blocked 99 times, but you make it that one time, then you accomplish what you set out to do. Right? But let's say you shoot it 5 times and it gets blocked and you stop. Then you will never make it in, and then you will have failed completely. Right? And so the objective that we're shooting for is trying until we are successful, until we do it, and until the end, right? And that's what until the end moves, until the end means. And I really pray that all of us can do this, that we can become bold and courageous in our own right. Like, for each person, that, there's different ways and different things that we can do that, right? Like, one of the things that we share with the newcomers, like, don't just invent new ways to put the word into practice. Do that too, but do it already within the sphere of the things that are going on in your life. Like, whether it's to do with your job, whether it's to do with your hobbies, right? Like, we talked about even making ministry efforts. Like, don't invent new hobbies for yourself to make ministry. I mean, unless you're okay with that and you want to do that, but the things that you're already doing. Like, one of the things that we know, like, that Pastor Scott used to do in the past, and he probably still could do now, and he does, is he goes to, like, cafes, right? And he goes cafe hopping, and he tries different coffees, and they've had newcomers join in part of these processes too. right? So instead of like finding new and inventing and like forcing yourself to do new things in the things that you're already doing, whether it's trying different coffees, whether it's maybe it's going out to see movies, right? Or it's going hiking or playing ping pong if you really like that. In those things, like start to include more and more opportunities to evangelize or to do something, to testify one thing or about the other. Um, and so do things in that kind of manner. Right, and so become courageous, become bold by continuing to do what it is that you need to do. Right, there was something in the message, and this will be the last thing for today, that God was saying was that, like the second title for the message is that God and the Holy Spirit help you every day. Right, and one of the things that I think he said that was really shocking within these last 2 weeks is that even if you don't um, put into practice, and even if you don't take action on what it is that you should, God and the Holy Spirit will think and will, from their perspective, they've given you everything that they needed to do. And that's such a shocking thing, because all of us have received things, and there may be things that we ask for. But when we really think about it, and this is also something that I think this is a mentality that we need to see from something. But for me, it also became really obvious when I was like reading Elon Musk's biography too, right? Like they have this tenacious will to try to do their best with everything. It doesn't mean that the circumstances look ideal. Like even when we built the Ambition masterpiece in Wilmington, like, and this is something that Pastor Sky talked about too, right? That like something didn't think that Wilmington was an ideal place. He didn't think that, we were building it because this is the place with God's will. But when he was making it, he was like, we're doing it here because we have no other place that we can do it. And it was only at the end and after everything that he saw that, no, oh, actually we did it here because God's will is here. And so we will see that with the things that we do, but really thinking about today's message and like last week's message, it made me think about like, oh shoot, like God has given me everything that I need to do what it is that comes to my mind. Right. And so there are things, of course, I should pray for and I should set condition and that I may need to wait for, but I shouldn't be just waiting around for everything, because God has already given me everything and he is continuing to take action on everything that I need to be successful in accomplishing God's will within within what I can do, right, in 2024 in July, in the second half of this year. And so I hope that everyone, that we can accomplish this for the future providence, for something, for the Trinity, and for ourselves too, so that we can each attain that glorious golden city of heaven, in the afterlife and in this eternal life that we have together with the Trinity. And so I hope that this was really inspiring and hopeful for each person, and that you will continue to have conversations both in the comment section and in the live stream with Rebel Pastor, in the engaging different things that we have, like with Aaron and Chelsea, and that we will have in our conversations together, both online, offline, with the members in each place, with the different testimonies that you guys will give. I really hope that we will continue to make Providence history in this way, and that we will shine more and more going forward. So thank you, everyone, and we will catch you guys tomorrow with both the live stream and also on another episode of the MSD on 117.8.